All right, Martin Chuck, welcome to Shamrocks and Shanks. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule down there to come on. I've been fortunate enough to spend some time with you personally last year. You were very, very nice, very welcoming to have me at your facility for a couple of days and watch you and your team in action. So I'm quite familiar at this stage with you, and I think even a lot of other coaches will be very familiar with your achievements, your accomplishments, you as an individual and your skills and all those things. Just kind of run down, teacher to numerous elite and tour players like Mike Weir, Darren, Clarke, to name a few. I think owner and founder of one of the most successful golf schools, definitely in North America, if not a wider kind of, placement would be very apt. And owner and founder of one of the most successful training aid companies in North America, if not a little bit wider, be quite apt. And numerous kind of accomplishments, named top 50 coach in America by Golf Digest 3 times. I could kind of go on. But in your own words, like, you don't have to go into the whole history. In your own words, for those that might not be overly familiar with you, what best to kind of describes your journey and kind of what you do now, I suppose?
Well, you're very kind. I think before we started rolling, I talked about the momentum, the inertia of a career, getting just be like literally putting one foot in front of the other. And then pretty soon, yeah, momentum happens. And if you're a good dude and you mean well and you do the right things and you have good mentors and people around you, I mean, things tend to work in your favor, mentorship for me was a big thing, which I'll get into some of my mentors. And then obviously my wife is a big part of the business as far as the training aid side of things. My coaches that are amazing that support me at the Raven. The tour player thing, like, the Darren, Clarke, the Mike Weir thing, like Mike's just a buddy of mine from when we were little kids in Ontario, so it's not like I'm standing over him on the range. Every once in the bluest of moons, he'd ask me a question, I'd help him. And it's nice that he said, I've given him some help over the years a little bit. And Darren Clarke, I think Darren's taken lessons from everybody under the sun, to be honest. The guy that a tour player I'm most proud of working with is Nick Taylor, just because he was a phenomenal amateur, but then he was lost after college, and I was able to spend a good, 2.5 years with him. And it was fun just to be the older guy that had sort of been through similar situations with college golf and professional golf, and having some coaching background to say, hey, listen, when I first met him, I think his agent reached out to a buddy of ours, and then we connected, and it was, watched him hit golf balls for a few minutes, and he was flushing it, but it wasn't the right ball flight for a high level player. It was like well hit, but low flighted 5-iron. Everything was like hit hard and kind of low. And that may have got you, far along in a, college golf course where the greens are sort of receptive in most cases, and they weren't really gearing up to make the greens firm and fast like they do a tour event. I think a little, your listenership and viewers, whether they're coaches, high level players, or just, weekend warrior lovers of the game, even a regular tour event. Like, I was involved in the Bob Hope because I was a club pro in Palm Desert, and we hosted the tournament 3 years in the mid '90s after my brief playing career. And it was interesting is that even that tournament, which we all thought was, they're going to shoot 30 under. Well, they do, because they're that good. But there was a lot of course prep, and the fairways, they get the fairways way faster, and they get the greens firm and fast, like way faster than members are accustomed to, playing the course and the speed of things, So with Nick, it was a situation where I kind of used Justin Rose, even though they're not physically the same frame, but Rosie had some, and it was a bit of Foley too. It was like, hey, there's some landing angle goals that good players have with different clubs in their bag. Just because you have a better chance if your ball hits the green to stay on the green. So using a little bit of that TrackMan playbook that like Foley was working on with Rosie, I'm like, hey, here's some common threads with what better players like Jason Day back in those days, could hit it really high and stop it really quick. And so, like, hit it flush for the weekend warrior is a lot of fun, but hitting it flush with a serious purpose for a tour player, so that it goes and stops where it lands. It's a way more precise event at that level. And so with Nick, circling back to Nick, the conversation was, hey, you hit it pretty nice, but the ball doesn't launch the way it ought to, and it doesn't land the way it ought to. So I think when we spoke about that, he was like, wow, okay, that's different. Because most lessons don't kind of, go by ball flight other than like wild curve. Okay, you slice or you hook it. Let's fix that.
Yeah.
Like he hit it, kind of where he was looking, but it was like flat and, heavy. Didn't really land nicely. So we went down that road, and I'd see him, once a week for the first series of weeks, and he'd go off and play. And he got to where he was like really crushing the mini tours around town in Phoenix area. And then he went and got on I don't even know what the tour was called back then. It was even called the Corn Ferry or whatever it was called. But he got to where he was pretty competitive in that. And he went to Q. I forget all the details, but he really had the ability to rise to the occasion. When his back was against the wall, he was a kid that could like buckle down and make something happen. And I couldn't tell, like he got on tour in 2014 and he won his like third event, Sanderson Farms. And I about fell out of my chair. I was at work coaching all day. And I wasn't in a chair. I was actually just on the range coaching. One of my assistants, Aaron Olson, is a wonderful teacher. You probably met Aaron over the years. He's up at Monterey Peninsula Country Club. And Aaron supported me at my golf school for years. Great guy. Lefty from Wisconsin. And so he was kind of giving me updates. He's like, oh my God, like Nick's one back, Nick's even, Nick's back to one. Now he's even, now he's one up, and I'm coaching this guy and I'm like, oh my God, I wanted to like break away and watch the event. But some guy paid him good money to come into town to work with me. So
yeah,
I didn't really even watch it. I caught the highlights. And, the interesting thing about Nick Taylor, back then we spent a lot of time on a TrackMan during the lessons, just kind of, obviously watching launch angle, landing angle, this and that. And he had never gotten my TrackMan. I mean, maybe 110. It was as fast as his club ever got on my machine. And in the nerves, in the moment of that tournament, they had some they were measuring some ball speed and club speed out there. And he had his like fastest club speed and ball speed in that tournament, just because adrenaline and flushing it, because he did. I think John Rollins was leading. Yeah. And John kind of ran into a few roadblocks on the back nine. I have nothing against John Rollins. I've never met the man. But I was, all of a sudden, made room for Nick to get a win, which was unbelievable. And as a coach, to be a small part of that was an awesome feeling. It really was. But back to coaching golf, people always say to me, hey Martin, who do you work with? And I go, I work with your dad. I work with your uncle. I work with the lady who literally is starting the game, and I love it. I love teaching some dude how to, put his hands on nicely and how to understand how to get the club on it and watch the ball go, whatever their physicality allows, and to have more fun. And to be honest, as a coach, there's revenue models. And, like I do these coach the coaches things, like PGA section speaking things, which I have a lot of fun with. And there's a lot of, now that I'll be 55 next week. So I'm older than most of the dudes in the room now, which is nice, or not. I don't know how I look at that, but the point is, through experience, what kind of coach do you want to be? Do you want the glamour of being, chasing around a tour player and staying in a hotel room and, going week to week and just kind of like chewing your fingernails off that they make cuts and do well and whatever it is you're guiding them with and it's always going to be their decision, by the way. But whatever it is, like, are you helping them? Or, do you build a great business in your local area and do well in that? And I really think that's the best way to go, whether you're some tremendous junior golf leader or you have a robust club program with ladies groups and men's groups and individual lessons. And, I mean, honestly, I think sleeping in your own bed should be a goal for everybody out there, unless you're like, good enough to play the tour, and the upside of it and the rewards there are tremendous. But being a tour coach, man, I don't know. I couldn't even think about it because I was too busy trying to raise my kids. And even when I was in my late 40s, like I was a decent player. I mean, I suck now, but as people are like, would you consider going to play again? I'm like, yeah, I was thinking about it because I still played pretty well. I had decent speed. I thought, okay, we'll see. Maybe when I'm 50, I'll well, I shouldn't say 50, but I'm like 47, 48, I'll work hard on my game. And, a lot of guys, it's a pipe dream, but me, it wasn't really a pipe dream. It was like, okay, like I'm good enough to maybe, just maybe. But then I thought, my little guy is like, at the time, he'd been 8, my daughter's 10. There's no way that I could do that and be away, because I didn't necessarily, wasn't like I had to go out and play and try to make money. I made plenty of money.
Yeah.
It was like, I want to raise kids and I want to have a good marriage and I love doing the golf school, and what little playing of golf that I do now, I do enjoy. I played a ton of rounds of golf in my life, just not so many in the last, 4 or 5 years. But, hopefully I get that desire back to go like tee it up, just to tee it up, because I still do love the game. I love playing it. It's but it's like anything else. I mean, you gotta keep the saw sharp or you don't cut the wood.
Yeah.
In golf, if you don't get out and get rounds and get the reps, the familiarity of walking into a ball with the routine and the outcomes and the possibilities of golf shouldn't be that hard, but it can be if you don't have the frequency of play to where you have to think about every little detail versus with frequency, it's like, okay, you pull a club, all the subconscious which is really the genius in the human. The subconscious makes most of the calculations. The conscious thinks they're driving the show, but they're not. And, the outcome can be functional and free versus like I just played with the guys in Austin for a couple of days. And man, it was fun, really fun. I played good as I played more golf, but it was just everything was like so calculated. I was so in my head. There was no freed up, and to get a golfer freed up, I mean, that's ultimately my goal, whether it's whatever level of player it is, some new golfer, can they learn a routine and walk in with some sound sense of ability and whatever fundamentals are, but can they walk in with some sound sense of understanding and like freely hit a shot? And that was a struggle with the guys I was playing with. They're all good players. And then finally it started to get a little bit better. And then, it's like anything else. It's a frequency thing. You got to do it more and do it more and do it more and do it more. And with that, you can free up a bit and have a bit more success, I think. So
yeah.
Anyway, I don't know what.
No, but even when you're talking about that routine, I remember seeing, I don't know where I saw it. It wouldn't have been that long ago. I think it was in the last 2 or 3 weeks, but a clip from you. And it was basically, and it might have been I think it was a visual clip, and you stepped into a golf ball and you were like, what does that look like? Like, how would you rate me as a player judged by my kind of routine and how I kind of approached how I approached setup? And, and then you did it completely the other way, and you were like, you can see, in those little things. When you're kind of looking at that stuff, so starting with kind of like with the club golfer, the weekend warrior, as you kind of nicely described them. I don't think there's few more qualified with the amount of club golfers that you have at your golf schools, which we'll talk about a little bit later on, to help club golfers out. So let's start by tapping into those experiences a little bit. And what's one of the most kind of common cause of issues you see in the club golfer's game?
Hands down, right there.
Yeah.
That the interlocking grip to me is the most, it's a disaster. I'll put it to you that way. It is a disaster. No, okay. It's comical because, I've got a selfie stick right here, and I'll use it. I've got a million golf clubs around, but so the golfer goes, they think there's some level of correctness in this connection of webbing to webbing. Okay. Because that, and nothing wrong with the interlocking grip. The problem is people always kind of go connect the webbing.
Yeah.
So then you get this kind of really weak palmy left hand and this, crazy, taco hold, like I'm chewing up a really good Taco Tuesday with the right hand. Okay. Now they're trying to build their momentum development, their swing feels, everything based on a grip that's awful. Versus, if they could just have somebody kind of go through, hypothenar, heel pad, and this is something across my hand rather than along my hand. And now there's a leverage opportunity. And if you want to interlock, that's fine. Yeah. But it's not something that's So, the grip is a disaster for most.
Mhm.
And I'm talking, these are lifelong beginner. These are golfers that, maybe shoot 85, 87.
Yeah.
They're so, they have to play. They can't hit it as far as they possibly could because they don't have the leverage, potential, and freedom for a lot of things from a decent grip,
Hmm.
because they just grip it so poorly. And now they're leveraging, awkwardly. They've got to create leverage in their elbow. And, next thing, because they got to try to whap it with some sort of forces.
Yeah.
So, just building good hands, like the attachment is massive. I'm a grip fanatic. And a lot of coaches aren't, they'll just like, and I get it, it's like, oh man, do I really want to go down the road of that, fixing that? And I'm lucky because I get them for 3 days. They come
Yeah.
and I got them. And I tell them, I say, I'm going to selfishly coach you. I'm going to selfishly coach you like I want you to make my high school golf team. And I go high school because, you're 13 or 4, you're 14-year-old freshman, 13-year-old freshman, and, and you want to make my team. And you're not going to make the travel team this year because my seniors are really good. You're not really good yet, but you might be. So let's make sure we, learn how to, teach you how to have a bit of a leverage possibility for some speed and articulating wrists for those little shots around the green you might need. And rather than this goofy, grip. And, it's amazing. Yeah. I joke, I've got one lovely, lovely lady who, my golf camp's not cheap, and she's been to it 10 times. She maybe 8 times. Okay. She might be the record holder. I've had a bunch of people around that number. Most get better. I'm going to be honest with you. Some people get in their own damn way all the time. And it's fascinating, man. And I said, and we're close friends. So I said, you realize it cost you about 15 grand to learn how to grip the golf club? And she's like, shut up. Don't remind me. I mean, like literally, she was palmy, interlock, miserable, and I fixed it, and I fixed it, and I explained it, and I drew with Sharpies, and I did tees in here, and this and that, and whatever. And then she would go back and forth with Coach Now videos, which are popping up on my phone as I speak. I'm seeing little notifications pop up there as I talk to you. Mm-hmm. And, and then finally, this golf club, she shows up for the last March. She came back to the camp, and she signed up again for this March. And man, the hands were on nice, and the club was leveraging better, and the club was going 5-6 miles an hour faster. And it was like, oh my gosh, like she's like, I know, it's awesome. I'm like hitting it. I'm like, yeah, but honestly, Steve, some people get that you can. I joke like I always try to drive the students to be their best. And sometimes I'm like, man, can I just say it a little bit better? Can I be a bit more clear? Can I drive it home a bit better? Like I want to be like the rah guy, but I hold them accountable too. So I came home, like might have been around then. My mom just turned 90. Okay. She never played golf. She was a golf widow. I was at the golf course all the time. I'm like, Mom, can I show you something? She's like, sure, dear. 89-year-old. I'm like, here, Mom, here's how you put your left hand on. Looks like kind of like that. Little bend back in the wrist. And here's how you put your right hand on, a little bit like this. And then take that pinky and just kind of overlap it in that kind of valley right of the index finger. Like, and then she just picked up a club after I showed her once, and she went, like this, dear? And I went, yeah, Ma, like that. So some people kind of can sort of see and do, and other people are so stuck in their what they have, like what was theirs, and they're so terrified of giving up what was theirs. Mm-hmm. And I say to them, I go, what you brought me is it really worth keeping? You brought me, funky path, bizarre attack angle, highly consistent, because trust me, everybody's consistent. They're just consistently bad because they're missing pieces. And I say, if what you brought me is so worth holding on to, why are you fighting? Why'd you come, and why are you fighting me now to try something that I really think will help you? Mm-hmm. And people, and they're so terrified to go the other way. You know what I mean? They're so terrified to go the other way. So it's fascinating. But
yeah, I think when I look at, grip issues and so forth, I think there's a maybe a misconception or definitely a misunderstanding of the value that, how we put our hands on the golf club and the effect that has. And, as coaches, we have maybe a deeper understanding of that effect. that we sometimes don't want to get into with players. But I think it's twofold. I think with players wanting or us wanting to change grips and players kind of being very hesitant, it's the understanding of how much of an influence that has. And then the plain old basic of I prefer not to change because it doesn't feel good. Would you kind of describe that as the low hanging fruit in terms of helping players then, or would there be kind of other areas that you kind of look at? So, for those players at home, hypothetically speaking, players at home that played for a long time that would prefer not to change their grips, let's say, and we know there's many of them. Where do you kind of see the low hanging fruit? Because there's so many ways to look at this in terms of like course management, in terms of fitness. I know at your 3-day golf school, one of those mornings is you get a guy to come in and do yoga with the players. Mm-hmm. So when you look at that, is it a case of, do you feel like the low hanging fruit is still a technical thing, or do you look in other areas, or is it a case by player kind of case?
It's, the original question, that I just jumped on the technique piece of the attachment, the grip, because I think all things kind of go from there. But when you go, the next thing is to me, a different kind of section of the game. It's, the primer swing, the pre-shot swing, and then the commitment to walking in and hitting a shot, in having that full commitment. And it's really hard. I have a bit that Scott Fawcett helped me with years ago that I use at every golf school, and you may have seen it when you were visiting. I can't recall, but it's a Tiger Woods video from 2000 when he won the U.S. Open, shot 12 under, and the next second person was 3 over, Ernie Els and Miguel Angel Jimenez. They were second, 15 shots behind him. Now, the amazing study of that season for Tiger Woods in 2000 was that Tiger Woods had a walk-in routine that was bulletproof, ironclad, unbelievable. Scott Fawcett said it was a walking meditation. Now, the interesting thing was that the things that preceded the first step of the walk-in were different. Meaning, say you had a more challenging shot, it required 3 or 4 practice swings. Maybe he was trying to create a big shape or hit a low or hit it high or whatever. So he would vary the behavior of the acquired feels he needed for each shot if it wasn't stock. Like if it was a stock 8-iron, like maybe he's a $170 or $160 and he wanted to hit 8-iron in the middle of the green or whatever, you'd see him pull a club, take like a 3/4-ish half speed swing, and then stand what I call in the tiger line, which is, I just say the tiger line, but it's the target line, the connection of where he stood the ball and where he wanted to start his golf ball. Might have been the flag, might have been the start of a shot shape, whatever. So that's his tiger line. He stood there. Now, preceding that was different timing. See my point? Might have been 40 seconds if it was a really hard shot. Might have been 6 seconds, or might have been 8 seconds if it was a stock wedge from a $135. Okay, but from the moment he took his first step to the moment the ball was hit was eerily the same. 13.2 seconds, 13.4 seconds, 13.3 seconds, 13.2. So it was just shocking. Like once he made his mind up and took his first step, you kind of see him go step, step, walk in, pair the hands, tip over, aim the face, settle his feet, take another look, another little dynamic waggle, balls in the air. And then usually it was a club twirl, put the club in the holster. Okay. The club golfer we coach, they never take their hands off the club, Steve. They go whack, and then they turn back, karate chop straight down, like they're going to kill the instructor. I've been, what's his face from like, what's that movie?
Yeah, I know.
Keanu Reeves.
Yeah.
Matrix. I've been Matrix in lessons so many times, buddy. It's hysterical. I've had my hats hit, nuts. I've luckily avoided major damage from a golf club. Some coaches haven't, but so the Keanu Reeves, and I tell people, and I joke, I say, hey, listen, I'm going to hit a couple shots, and I want you to learn something really cool from this. And you're not a hockey guy, being an Irishman, but Adam Oates, okay, is an NHL Hall of Famer, and Adam Oates is a friend of Weir's. He was a great hockey player, really intelligent hockey player. Really fell in love with golf. And when Weirzy and I were in the desert years ago, he used to practice at the club I was head pro at. And he said to me, God, I got to find a full-time coach. And I said, well, I've got a guy for you. I want you to meet. His name is Mike Wilson. So I connected him with Mike Wilson, who was my buddy from years before at a club we were both assistant pros at. So sure enough, Mike Wilson and Mike Weir had a great run. I don't know, 10 years, 12, 15 years maybe of coach student. And they were great. And they won the Masters together and 7 other tour events. Anyway, Willie, we called him Mike Wilson. Willie calls me up because he knows I'm a hockey lover. And he goes, you're not going to believe this. He goes, you know Adam Oates is? I go, of course I do. And he goes, he called me and wanted to take a lesson. This goes back to my point. It'll circle back, trust me. Yeah. He goes, this guy called me up and it said, I'm a friend of Weir's, blah, blah, blah. He goes, I want to take a lesson and I want to learn how to twirl the club. I want to learn how to twirl the club. And Mike Wilson's like, excuse me? He goes, yeah, I've noticed. He goes, notice when really good players hit a shot and they're in there and then they can twirl that club and put it in their hip pocket kind of thing. Man, that's when they really hit a good one. They get that club twirl. He goes, if I can twirl it, I think I can get better outcomes because my mind's in a better frame every time to want to have this sense of putting the club there and spinning it and letting it come down on my hip. And Willie was like, wow. And so he told me this. We met for dinner that night, actually, after he took that phone call years ago in Palm Desert. I'm going to say late 90s. So this was this conversation we had, okay? And I'm thinking, wow, that's eerily similar to what George Knudson used to say to me. George Knudson was like, always think of the end in mind. Like, it wasn't just contact and forget it. It was this sense of, where are you going to, like, you're going to rip through a golf ball. Where does all this energy go and how does it rebound and relax? And then where are you after you hit it? And, it's like, wow, okay. So I saw the genius in what made this guy, a great hockey player, other than amazing athleticism and effort and years of, support with his family and this and that. But for a guy to call a really good teacher, Mike Wilson, and ask for a lesson on how to twirl the club, have you ever been asked to be taught that?
Not yet, no.
You know what I mean? Now,
the ultimate forward planning.
Right? Who I could see saying that is like maybe some really cool, cocky young junior.
Yeah.
I could see some little hipster wanting to learn how to do that, right? Because he's like, you saw Tiger, some epic club twirls after amazing shots. I think above like the Ryder Cup and different in the President's Cup with Tiger and obviously the majors that he won. And then tour players, they hit that shot and they stand there, they're loving it, and there goes the club twirl. So it's like, here's this great hockey player talking about forecasting great outcomes. And so back to circling back now, so with I'm a crazy nut about routine. Yeah. So I don't care if you shoot 200 or you shoot 67. Okay. Eden Cho's a great player. He's going to Stanford, and Eden was spent the day with me last not too long ago. And all we really worked. I mean, this guy hit it like so flush, it was stupid. And I'm like, I can't fix perfect, man. Like, it was perfect. And the only thing I could say to him was, the only thing I can be mildly help you build up a bit better is to, would you like to be a bit more like Tiger? Of course. Well, let me show you his routine. Let me show you why he was so dominant this season and the statistics of his walk-in routine. And you'll start to see that it allows you to go from conscious to subconscious to performance, rather than thinking about every little swing thing that might be terrifying, that takes you away from target and feel and rhythm and balance and, those kind of things. So, this a lot of time, even with a newbie, because here's why. I want them to take things off their checklist in the pre-shot. When they're standing behind the ball, can they put their left or lead hand on nicely? Can they get the leading edge spot on? Like Justin Rose does this kind of Zorro thing, Can they get the leading edge spot on? Can they put a great left hand on for the right-handed golfer? You lefties, deal with me, sorry. But, can they have this great left hand with this great leading edge? If you can get a great left hand and a great leading edge, you almost got it licked. Okay? Now, when you're walking in, can you assemble your arms and pair your hands while you're walking in, while you're kind of crescenting into the ball? Can you waggle while you're crescenting in? Can you tip over, put the club to the ball and take a look? So if you can kind of walk in, pair your hands, assemble, and I always say, because you get these broad-chested guys where their elbows are back behind them, and I try to get them, no, buddy, get that humerus up on that pec, get that, that lead arm's more structured, that trail arm's a little softer. Well, you can do all of that walking into the ball and be done with it. So when you finally get on top of the ball, guess what you get to do? Just hit the damn thing. You see my point?
Yeah.
So there's mental assembly happening in the walk-in routine. So people are checking boxes, completing their laundry list of things they want to do. And then when they're over the ball, all of a sudden it's like, hey, I am beautifully set up over this thing. It's time to freewheel at it. Rather than most people walk in, plunk their feet down, start putting their hands on, start fidgeting around and this and that. No. None of that. None of that. Stop. Do it again. People look at me like, what are you talking about? Nope. Stop. Do it again. Come on. Oh, man, this guy's a toughie. Well, no, I'm not. I want you to be really good. You want to be really good? Watch my coach Mike hit it. Watch my coach Jim hit it. Watch Brian Pate hit it. Watch Garrett Lewis hit it. Watch Brian Geiberger hit it. Watch me hit it. Guess what? You want to be good? Do what good players do. Good players have a sense of collecting data, putting a certain feel for that data, and there's a defined walk-in behavior that lets the possibility of the outcome be high. That's the big deal. Not just random roll the dice. Maybe it's good. Yahtzee. You know what I mean? No. Let's have a high likelihood of a nice outcome because we've taken care of our business when we get over the golf ball. So now fundamentally you say, what are the things? Well, let's get good hands on there. Yeah, that's what I see as a low-hanging fruit. Okay. Yeah. 2, can somebody stand behind a golf ball, make a good choice, make a fairly aggressive, passionate golf swing to a reasonable target, not like pin hunting all day or something crazy like that. And then can they reflect on it afterward? Were they really freewheeling and committed? Were they a sissy about it? What can they learn? Did they have, were there, was it thoughts of here's what I say. I'm never mad if I mishit it. I mean, I can get a little heated, but I'm never mad if I mishit it. I'm mad if I miss it before I hit it.
I like that.
You see the difference?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Because if I've hit terrible shots thinking I was going to hit a great shot. I did. Like on the other day, I was playing with my buddies. We're on the last hole of we're playing an emergency 9. It all came down to this par 3, the 9th hole. And it's a stock buck 65 7-iron, tiny green, water left, pins back right. And I'm like, in my brain, I hit it 3 feet. When I looked up, it was going in the water. And I was like, oh shit. And it went in the water. But you know what? I was like, but I wasn't, but in my brain, it was a good shot before I hit it. See my point?
Yeah.
I got to hit that shot the next day and I hit a good one. But it wasn't, I never, if you miss it before you hit it, that sucks. That's a waste of time.
Yeah.
See my point?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. I'm in total agreement. I think with the availability of information now in terms of that stuff, I think players have a lack of trust in what they currently have. I think that's what I'm getting from you is like, and I remember I did some work with Carl Morris early on in my career, and Carl would always say to me, whatever game you have that day, whatever swing you have that day, you will perform to your best or shoot your lowest score, let's say, if you focus on the target and just focus on your routine. I think players nowadays have a tendency that they have to consciously think of something or some technical thing to make this all work. And I think that's a misconception again of, if you just allow it to happen, you could be surprised at some nice things that kind of occur instead of trying to, I always say to players when you work on certain things, they're like, oh, I'm giving up control. I'm like, well, no, you're giving up the ability to manipulate. So manipulation and control feel like kind of similar kind of traits, but they're very, very vastly different. When you look at again, going back to like your schools and being involved with so many club golfers, how do you feel the relationship to practice is right now between like your club player, your weekend warrior, and practice in how they learn these things. Because, as you said, you get them for 3 days. So you and the team there can really do some great work and kind of show them how to practice, how to learn these things that you're working on, really get their perception, their understanding on the right kind of the nail edge. What about for the other golfers that aren't lucky enough to kind of be in the presence of you or other great coaches? How do you feel the kind of understanding the perception is with practice and the relationship with it?
So are you asking me if somebody can't come see me?
So your average player who might be listening to this, I think, when we look at it and go, okay, well, I don't think the understanding of purely practice on its own, practice being defined as, developing a skill you already possess. So for a lot of our players that come to a lesson, they're really learning as they leave. But I would say from my perspective, when I look at how players are trying to, because we're all trying to improve, we're all trying to get better. I think how they try to do that is more the stumbling block for a lot of these things. Yeah,
I think, man, it would be really, think about anything like that though. It'd be really hard to get good. There's certain physicality traits that some humans they can be better at sports just because they're bigger, faster, stronger humans. And that will take them a fairly good ways. And their eye-hand coordination, certain things let them outperform other humans. Now, when you get maybe an average physicality human, but they have good technique, that person can outperform that better athlete that doesn't have the technique. But to the person that doesn't have the opportunity to spend time with a high-level coach, because what a high-level coach will do is they will drill to the root issue of the boo-boo. Like, what is the root cause of these mishits or the wild ones? That's what a good coach is going to do. And then once you find a root cause, whether it's, some club face issue, some body dynamics issue, something like that. Now the player's like, okay, I have a root thing that I'm going to constantly work on. Every tour player has one. Everybody has it. And then surrounding that in practice, you're always saying, okay, I always have a constant tune-up for my root cause issue. And it might be, that's why, hysterically, like the smart ball. Okay, it goes, the smart ball. Like I'm blown away how many of the best players use that damn ball. Like at the Ryder Cup, 4 guys were practicing with it. There's only 24 players in the field, man. Okay, and like 4 guys are using that thing there. I didn't see another training aid. I shouldn't say that. I saw Matty Fitz had a triangular grip on his driver. I saw an orange whip. I saw all kinds of aim sticks. But here's this stupid ball between the forearms, right? And all it was a better mousetrap than the other mousetraps. So even the best players in the world go to, okay, well, this sensation of managing, this is something that helps me. So everybody has a root cause thing that they like to touch back on. And a good coach is going to say, okay, mister, you have a wide open face to path, or you have a very thrusty situation that, slams the club face closed most of the time. And so let's identify this as the big issue. You'll always probably have to work on this the rest of your golfing life or be aware of it. Then let's shore up other things with, like, can you hit these pitch shots like from 15, 25, 35, 50 yards away? Can you hit a functional bunker shot? Are you chipping the ball? Can you touch the ball nicely with a little wee chip shot, which most people can't? So you have a root issue. That's a primary thing for a student. Then you have all these little supportive things that can really make them better. So, with me in practice, I always say, okay, practice is 3 pieces. It's like there's a technique component, there's a trickery component, and then there's a test. So technique might be, all right, we've identified some bizarre, and maybe it's a training aid, or maybe it's a wrist thing, or whatever. It doesn't matter. There's a root thing. And if you go practice for half an hour, 10 minutes is on absolutely, getting this technique bit down without outcome feels. It's hard not to worry about outcome, but it's like, no, 10 minutes, please. Just give me 10 minutes of technique. Well, maybe you're learning how to rotate your pelvis and you're doing underspeed swings, whatever, 10 minutes. Now, 10 minutes of trickery. What's that? It's fun. It's how high can I hit 7-iron? How low can I hit 7-iron? Can I bend it around this way? Can I flight it around that way? How creative can I get after I did my technique?
Yeah.
That's 10 minutes. Okay. And then finally, the last 10 minutes is I'm not leaving this range. Maybe it's longer than 10 minutes, but it shouldn't be. Is that until I stripe, 5 balls within those two things, or I'm not leaving until I hit 5 shots on that green from this distance. Now give yourself a reasonable challenge, like within your scope of efficiency. But, to me, that's a good session. And I always say, write your note, like take a notepad and like write down a few sentences, because it's amazing what doing this on a piece of paper does.
Yeah.
Because one, you get to look at it again. Two, there's this flashback of when you wrote it. You put a date on it. I have somewhere here in my file, like notes that I have from like the Canadian tour in 1992.
Mm.
Okay. Like I was hitting it really good. I wrote these notes. I probably have it right here. See if I can find it. I'm pretty sure I kept them. I'm certain I did. I don't want to waste your time, but yeah, I just had a notebook.
And don't your players get a notebook at the start? Like
yeah, they do.
Yeah,
little notebook.
Yeah.
Just to say, hey, take a second.
Mm.
You don't have to hit balls every minute of every day. There's a lot of value in sitting in your chair, watching the others go through their suffering. And I say suffer with me for 3 days because it is. It's fun though. It's fun suffering. And just write a note. You grip. My palm felt like it was facing the target more rather than facing at the sky. Yeah. My left hand feels, I feel more of the pinky finger of my left hand wrapped around the grip now, or something that connects to the memory. And then when I'm coaching golfers too, like say you have a club in your hands and I'm kind of manipulating you a little bit, I will physically grab you to the point of like, whoa, you're going to bruise me. Like not to hurt you, but like Mark Evershed. You remember Mark Evershed? You ever meet Mark in Southern Ontario? Legend. Okay, so you should find him. He's around. He's like Bagger Vance, I swear. Mark Evershed is a wonderful coach and very good player back in his day, like really good ball striker. And when George passed away, I spent some time with Mark, and we're still friends. And I think he's somewhere in Southern Ontario. I don't know where he's coaching now. And he's got some health issues, but he's still out there grinding away. And he would, if up here, he'd literally like do something and hold my hand in a certain way for like 1,000, 2, 1,000, 3. And I'm like, I can remember all of those little funky little touch points.
Yeah.
Nothing creepy, not creepy.
No. But like
just
making,
like,
yeah.
You know what I mean? Like literally like a feel to where I even say, I'm going to squeeze your wrist right now for a second.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to squeeze it, not bend it or flat. I'm just going to squeeze it for a second because trust me, when you watch this video that I'm making for you, because I always use Coach Now and record everything I do with the students, that's going to flood you with a memory of that moment way more than just watching a video.
Yeah, 100%.
You see, I don't give anybody a nurple or anything, but I will absolutely put my hands on them and bear wrestle them a bit because it's more of a memory trigger of what I was doing with them.
Yeah.
And then you watch like I think George Gankus is a genius. Yeah. Like he's like gosh, I don't know what he is. He's like a frenetic genius. Seriously. Yeah. Like fast talking, like I think he's way smarter than everybody else. But and he'll have like all kinds of it's like a pit crew. You go get a lesson with George, and there's like 6 people with the
Johnny and Pep's working on either side. Yeah,
you know what I mean. Guys are twisting hips, and somebody's holding heads, and there's sticks and stuff. And I'm like, yeah, you know what? That might be like tin cup for some coach or somebody to look at, but I guarantee you that person has a memory trigger when George's associate is in there ripping hips around or pushing a leg a certain way or. Up there with, setting a ball in a certain spot, like those kind of things. You can't be afraid as a coach. And I think a lot of people are like, hey, weary of, they're going to keep their distance at a lesson. I don't, I make sure I have some gum and some spearmint gum because I'm on that student, I'm in there fixing their grip and, adjusting their humerus and softening their elbow and moving their hip around. And, I will do what, George's guys and George will do is, get down there and move some hips around and stuff and have a laugh doing it. Because those are memory triggers that help people resonate back to, what it was the coach wanted and hopefully there's, some outcome success where like, oh, okay, I see, that's cool, it worked for me.
Yeah, like they need to create that marker in their system. Like George does a really, really good job. And, when I spent time with George and we chatted, and he would always say, like, people don't know. Like, and if you haven't been there and spent time in the lesson, you don't really know what he does. You just see it from outside. But he's a responsibility because it's quite expensive to spend an hour with him. He goes, I got to get those guys or girls hitting the ball in that hour. So I'm going to do whatever the hell it takes to get them to hit it. And,
Right.
there's a responsibility there. And I really found it interesting what you said about them writing notes. For me, I use Coach now as well. So all my players would get like the lesson review at the nighttime. But I always say to them, before you get that, if you can, go home and just literally write out in your own words, your own verbiage, your own feels, your own imagery, because that'll stick an awful lot more than what I will say in the video as much as possible. When you're kind of looking at, just the last one for the club players, like the distance factor, like obviously is being kind of like talked to death in the last couple of years. And definitely we see, guys on tour and girls on tour getting longer and longer. Do you see that at your golf schools as well? Do you see like kind of like, I know I'm not talking about particular players, but overall as an average, or do you still see that kind of like stagnant, that level hasn't really increased? And if so, what if a club golfer arrived in your lesson tee tomorrow morning, bear in mind physical restrictions, issues, height and body structure, what are some things that those players could look at to kind of increase their distance?
I would say that, like, if we're just talking distance, it's fascinating how players will have limited hip rotation, backswing hip rotation. The big thing that I see that is like literally pluck it off the tree is they will flex their trail leg more during their backswing and limit their pelvis rotation. And then they'll do all kinds of stuff to try to create swing length. Okay. So I have a stupid thing. I call it rodeo belt buckle. And I actually have, this tournament I want a rodeo belt buckle. It's framed, it's in the studio. And I'll say, okay, this rodeo belt buckle, when you wear it, it's kind of tipped over looking at the golf ball. I want you to rotate that buckle to the down the line camera. And I'm going to say, go ahead and let your trail leg loose flex. Get a little wild for me, because I need this pelvis to rotate way more so the chest can rotate, so that you don't kind of create too much complexity with your arms. Because one of my things is I always say, whatever you wind up, you have to unwind. So if you wind up complexity, it's hard to unwind complexity fast. It's way easier to have more rotation of a body with simpler behaviors with elbows and wrists, rather than stuff that has to kind of find a place of sense back at impact. So, like, to me, like, to the golfer at home, the way adults learn golf is kind of goofy, right? They stand over a golf ball, they look down, somebody tells them to keep their head down, they give it a whack. Maybe it goes. And if they're super strong, maybe it goes a bit and they can go shoot 92. Okay, like, way to go. Okay, then they're terrified to move their pelvis, because, whoa, that range of motion's terrifying. To actually, really look over a left shoulder down at a golf ball. Like, a lot of mobility is simply, can you, like, this is a backswing, there's a through swing. People don't think about it as a head rotation.
Can you rotate
a backswing? Can you rotate and look over your left shoulder? And Rory, like, basically, if he had lipstick on, would put lipstick on his golf shirt every time. Some people's neck's different. It can be, they can turn the shoulder under their chin. Hogan used to wear out a little spot on his practice golf shirts, because he'd wear the same. He hated the fact that his 5 o'clock shadow would, like, wear out a spot right here. So he had practice golf shirts, rather than the ones that he wore to tournaments that looked nice, that he wanted to keep nicer. Okay. So everybody's physicality was different, but, range of motion and mobility, like, encouraging that is a big deal for people, because then they can have mobility in a certain area and more stability in another area, and simplicity. Yeah. And so that now they can have a bit more speed there. And then just the fact that, hey, it's okay to give it a rip. Like, once you take away the complexity and you have reliability, all these, idiot words, once you have that, now you can feel like you can go ahead and get aggressive, and your outcomes, that, your cone of miss will be reasonable. So, you're going, And I think I did a golf school in Quebec City last month. It was fun. It was a good athlete dude. He was probably 65, 62, something like that. His hips, literally, his hip turn was like nothing. So his trail arm went way behind him,
Yeah.
stood up the shaft, laid it, could kind of hit it because he was a good athlete. And then when I literally told him the rodeo belt buckle and got his hip turned, he's like, "Oh my gosh, you're kidding me. I feel so out of control." I'm like, "Well, you're not out of control. You look great." And now your arms are way more organized so that they're not doing all this crazy business. You're taking up way more range of motion now because your hips are turning, your chest is moving. Now your arms are more reliable to come back and give a ball a wallop rather than just you trying to create it all with phony wrist conditions and funky elbows. So to me, like that's where I see, again, come back to grip. You got to be able to create a good lever and some speed from there. But then, that pelvis rotation in the backswing to me is huge for the club golfer because most of them don't do it right. They don't grip it correctly and they don't rotate their pelvis. They really don't. And they don't side bend either. They rotate a forward flex and they're good luck. And I'm amazed they get as good as they get. They're just dedicated and play every Saturday and maybe Wednesday night and they get pretty good. Shoot their 88,
I love that concept of unwinding simplicity. I really, really do. I love that idea. That visual is definitely kind of rings true for me anyway, in terms of that stuff. So I think that's a great concept. If we're moving on to the coaches kind of section, so obviously we kind of talked about your achievements or qualifications or success, let's say, earlier on. So as I said, you worked with or be fortunate enough to work with or being around some of the best players in the world, and then maybe some of the not so talented players. How does, if at all, your coaching kind of style shift from working, with those kind of more elite players to working with your everyday club golfers?
So most of the elite players that I work with, and I don't work with too many anymore, like I really don't, nor do I care to be honest, but it's at that point, an elite player realizes that I'm not that far off being an elite player myself. Okay. Like, I'm not going to go shoot 65, but I mean, I can still golf my ball a bit and I can demonstrate and I can still hit shots. And I hit some balls today in my golf room because I like the fact that I love golf. I really do. So, to have an understanding with an elite player, I think a coach has to have some sense of what it was like or some awareness of what they've gone through. And now I know that's a great argument. Like, maybe you can say, Mike Adams is a great coach. I don't know what his pedigree playing is. Don't know. But there's, do you have to know what that great player has gone through at a level? And I kind of think you do. I think you need to really be able to say, hey, listen, your keister is going to tighten up so much on the last 3 holes of this tournament, you won't even be able to feel your feet. You got to prepare for the most bizarre awarenesses of your body. You're going to feel like you're having an out of body experience. It's going to be the weirdest, but you got to look at it like what a blessing this is going to be. And then that's why the training takes over. That's why the routine's so important. That's why, it's like I joke, I say, I tell people, do you know how to type? Anybody type? And some of my campers will put their hand up, and I can type and I type half a paragraph. And I'm like, whoa, it's on the page. Well, what did I just do? This subconscious blah, blah, came out because I trained it. Right. So when I'm coaching better players, I'm more of a hard ass as far as what I expect. It's like, I'm a good dude, but it's like, let's not waste each other's time. If you're going to work with me, this is the expectation, and if I tell somebody he's good, they're good. And if I tell them that they can, speed dictates that they're good. The reliability that's the beautiful thing nowadays. You can measure it and you can tell somebody they're good because machine says it. It's not just some anecdotal old coach saying you're good. That's why I think these college kids come out because guess what? TrackMan says you swing at 124 and your ball speed's 180 and you fly at 320. And guess what? You're already in the top 20% of the tour players out there right now. So why should you be worried about Zach Johnson when you go play with him?
Yeah.
Now he may beat the crap out of you because he's so good, and and he's better at other elements of the game. But kid, you got speed, you have reliability. Now let's really see what we have to shore up. Is it scoring wedge shots? Is it, creativity and funny bunker shots? How can I challenge you to where when these situations come your way, you feel like you've got them?
Yeah.
Because and oftentimes like, as if I get a guy who's like 21 or 22, and I've had these guys over the years, and they're fast and they're good, and they're like, and I'll say to them, are you really prepared to do this? Are you really prepared to not go out with your buddies on Friday night and chase girls? Are you prepared to go to the gym and get sleep and hydrate and get up and do it again? Are you, let's pick a day where you can have a few beers and eat a pizza and this will be your cheat day for life. Okay. Or the rest of if you want to beat the best, man, you got to do stuff the best. You got to be such, unless you're the most athletic freak of freaks,
Yeah.
you got to be so dedicated to your craft that you're not wasting, not like you got to hit a zillion balls a day, but you're not taking away 1 ounce of success from one of your body cells.
Yeah.
I mean it. Like every bit of peaceful focus has to be aligned. Okay. And then you can have your cheat day with your beers, and maybe it's Sundays after a successful tournament or it's whatever, but it can't be halfway.
Yeah.
Halfway doesn't work. You're all in or you're not in. And so I've interviewed coaches, I've interviewed players, and they've interviewed me as to see if we're a relationship.
Yeah.
And I think I terrify them, and that's fine. Because
Yeah.
unless they're all in, I'm not even interested. So,
Yeah, 100%. Like, because then sometimes the blame kind of comes around and shifts back onto the coach when, as you said, the player wasn't willing to. I think sometimes the night, the kind of the glamour, so to speak, of tour golf, and then you don't realize the work that it takes, or that how hard some of these players actually work behind the scenes to get to the level they're at, and to even to maintain to the level that they're at is phenomenal. Some of the work that you see.
No idea. And the whole, the Ryder Cup thing. So, I went to the Ryder Cup, which was a blast. And, the whole pay the players, don't pay the players. And I know there's like, well, these guys are millionaires and they should, play for their country. And I'm like, wait a second here. Just wait a second. Okay. There's no more off season really in golf. The PGA Tour has basically crushed all the other world tours. It's a wraparound season. If these guys play in the FedEx Cup, they have so little time to really prepare for the Ryder Cup. Now, if you want them to take the Ryder Cup, like physically and mentally as serious as they can, that should be something that is, congratulations, you made it. Here's a big congrats piece of cash for you. Way to go. Top 6. I'll give you my, like, if it was me, I was the king for a day. Top 6 guys, you make it on points, because that's how it is right now on the PGA Tour. Fine. Top 6 guys, you're in, you earned it, you make some stupid amount of money. Congratulations. Okay. Next 6 guys, they get picked, they don't get paid. Their captain's picks, they go. But guess what? Every point you win is worth a bucket load of dough, whatever that amount is. Because, Samuel Ryder's little event to as some rich guy back in the day, to get the British PGA and the American PGA together for a good knockaround and a few pints, that's not what the Ryder Cup is anymore. No. I'm sorry. It's $100 million event that is making tons of dough here and there and everywhere. Not that the players need it. They don't. But if they know going in, hey, I made this thing, I get this mass, and then people go, oh, they're going to get endorsements. Not necessarily.
No.
You better be
not if you play crap either.
and maybe your personality is an endorsement worthy personality. Maybe you're a bit of a rotten see you next Tuesday. Maybe you're not an endorsement type person. That's okay. Yeah. Right. But I tell you what, if you make that team and you're top 6, boom, windfall. And you're mindful now of being, damn it, this isn't just a little barbecue thing. I know it's not, but let's be prepared. Let's not play in 2 tournaments before the Ryder or 1 tournament before the Ryder. Let's go over early. Let's get our game studied a bit more. Let's be massively mindful of it. Like it's a business, man. And and you're playing for your damn country. You're right, you are, and you're proud to do it. But Now, okay, guess what? I'm going to play my ass off for that point. I want to win anyway. Don't get me wrong,
Mm-hmm.
but it's like, it's not the same event that Samuel Ryder, conjured up when it began, because it's gone on a completely new tilt, and
Yeah.
everybody makes $1 squillion except the players. They get some amount they get to donate to their charity
Yeah.
of
They
their
get
choice,
200
which is
grand to
cool.
charity or something. Yeah.
That's awful kind. And then they get their family, a couple family people and their wife get comped and stuff. But it should be a little bit more of a business transaction, to my point, with a bit more expectation on preparation.
Mm-hmm.
That's my point. You see where I'm going with that?
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. I think when you look at something like that and you're like, okay, at the start, maybe I'm happy not to get paid. But now if I see someone making money off my name and what I'm going to do and the skills I bring to the table, then you start feeling a little bit, hey, I'm kind of getting taken advantage of here. And I think there's definitely a dichotomy between European and American viewpoints on this.
Sure.
I think
Oh,
European,
I'm a Canadian, bro. I'm
yeah,
I'm
you're
Switzerland.
neutral, man. What do you
You
think
know
of
what
the
I mean?
President's Cup?
Yeah, I mean, I think Where's gonna. I hope a bunch of Canadians make it, just because it's in Montreal.
Yeah, it's going to be a great event.
Where's he's in a tenacious dude, and I know I didn't ask him about his opinion about the Ryder Cup. I should. I'm going to give him a call and ask him. But
Because that's where he beat Tiger, didn't he? Did he beat Tiger in
he
there in the
beat Tiger
singles?
in the Presidents. Yeah,
Yeah.
he did. It was an amazing match. Was that in
Was
was
that
that in
Roy
Canada?
Montreal?
I think it was.
Yeah, I think that.
It
Yeah,
was. It came down
yeah.
to the wire, and where's he played his ass off, and Tiger hit a drive that he kind of hit it left on 18, I want to say, and it went in the bog or whatever. But yeah, no, it's just a ferocious match where Tiger played good, where's he played his ass off, and I'm sure Tiger wanted that driver back, but that was one of those events where Tiger didn't necessarily know where it was really going to go off the tee, but
Yeah,
yet it was still Tiger Woods.
yeah.
Played amazing, because one of the best club twirls ever was in that President's Cup, in the team. I forget who he was
Oh
playing with,
yeah.
but do you remember the one I'm thinking
I
of?
think
He
he hit
hit
like,
like
was it an iron, like a 7 iron, 8 iron or something
yeah,
from the left side
and
of the
he just gave
fairway?
it the
Yeah,
you know
yeah,
what I mean, club
yeah. It's
twirl, but
still
it
the
was just
best one
epic.
ever. Yeah,
It is,
100%.
because he knew,
Um,
and yeah.
sorry. You've discussed kind of at the start of this session, your influences. So George Knudsen
Yeah.
would be one, Mo Norman kind of a second. So they're
Hmm.
two, like when you look at like the history of those two individuals, they're two massive influences. So for myself and other coaches, like when we're trying to like learn from you, learn from George, learn from Jeff Smith or Scott Cokes, whoever the case may be,
Hmm.
sometimes it can be easy to put, let's say, too much stock in what you're learning from that person, because I don't want to say you put them on a pedestal, but they have certain achievements, so they recognition. Did you ever find it difficult, or even how did you reconcile the information that you would learn from George and Mo and put your own kind of stamp on it, or your own understanding, or process it in your own way?
I think you can't be afraid to like, my coaches, for example. It's fun to coach with a team, because then we bounce ideas back and forth, and
Mm,
and then you have Brian Pate, who's he didn't come up as a great golfer. He's a functional golfer. He's a pretty good golfer now, actually. Can challenge par and hits it nice. And he's so passionate about learning from other guys that have success.
mm,
And so, and being a super smart coach is great. And what's been amazing about watching him develop isn't necessarily the fact that he has acquired so much information from other great coaches. It's he has now ability to have a simple conversation, to have a fun conversation, get a root cause communication to a person with the least amount of headwind. He doesn't try to prove he's a genius. I see a lot of
mm.
coaches who think they're really smart, and they use a lot of fancy terms and expressions and stuff. Baloney. You're doing that to make yourself. That's your own personal flaw to do that. What person you have in front of you, speak to them in the language that they can handle. If they're a doctor and they know flexion, extension, abduction, adduction, and stuff like that, and that's their language, because learn it in med school, fine, you can throw that stuff around. If they're work for the post office, maybe they don't know that, and maybe you can use bowed and cupped and up and down and in and out, simpler framework that gets the same message across. That's more of a standard communication than something that might be between two people that work in a hospital. So we don't have to look like geniuses. We just have to. I always say a lesson should be fun first, and fun can come in the form of the excitement upon getting better. Doesn't mean you have to be like a clown and tell jokes. It just means that you inspire excitement. That's fun. And then through that, they're like, can't wait to go to the range. Can't wait to go play. Hey man, I had a good time. I got better at this dude. Go see that guy. Yeah. Go to his camp or take a lesson or do whatever. And that's really, really cool. So, kind of lost my train of thought and where I was going with that, but so I'll let you ask me another question because I'm 50.
So I guess what you mean is kind of like you took all those things that you would have learned from George and Mo and kind of went, okay, cool. I know all these things now. That's cool. But I'm not going to overburden the person in front of me with all this knowledge. I'm going to kind of disseminate it and decide when to dole it out and how to dole it out. And
yeah,
I think, and for me, I only really came across George, it's really about 2 years ago, like, obviously kind of getting to know the Canadian stuff. What was kind of some of the main kind of lessons you learned from George that he really instilled in you that you kind of, still value to this day, let's say?
Well, he was a big fan of, this expression that I used when I coached, rotate and relocate. So a big fan of learning how to kind of understand that he always felt the game was played with the feet. So you always kind of felt the ground with your feet. And so a lot of people stand in there and are static.
Yeah.
So his whole thing was, no, don't do that. Stand and feel the ground. And then this sense of, we have these pressure mats and things and graphs and, it shows us all that now, right? But, his whole thing was, okay, you feel this with the feet. And then there's this kind of pressure that gets you to turn. And then you get to counter rotate and relocate. So, there's a rotation and a relocation. So he was a fan of somebody rotating, but without a lot of lateral behavior, and then relocating a little bit toward the target and rotating. So we used to have, a lot of those things he was a big fanatic of just learning how to rotate onto your lead foot, knees together, hips, chest, facing the target. He recognized that you'd go beyond that and then kind of recover back to that position. But that would be like his primary thing. His other primary thing was, he always taught the grip. He was pretty steadfast about doing that nicely, nothing crazy. Yeah, he never let us set the club on the ground ever. So the club was never really resting on the ground. It was always a part of us. It could flex the grass, but the weight of it didn't rest. So, it's always like if the ball was at a different place in space, you wouldn't be dependent on setting the club down on something. You're always kind of finding this radius to a golf ball. And then because the ball could be below your feet, above your feet on some kind of funny hillside.
Yeah.
Which I think that was there was gold in that. That I would say that was his kind of technique. He called it a loading motion and unloading motion. He didn't call it a backswing. It was always a loading motion. Unloading motion was a rotation and relocation. We did simple drills, where the club face, would kind of go toe up kind of thing. This is way back before anybody was talking about club center and mass and its effects on wrist conditions and things. So like there's George got to watch George got to watch Hogan up close. He became a wonderful ball striker, a highly revered ball striker. He had multiple 8 wins on tour and literally was one of the worst putters you can imagine for a high level player. Like the awful putter, he hit it. It's amazing that I think that's why he probably quit the tour when he did. He quit in his 40s because he was so haunted putting that he was like, oh my gosh, whereas I couldn't imagine if he putted it nicely, like it would have been a joke.
Yeah.
because he drove it really well and very far, in that era with those clubs. And, he had such command over his golf ball. But yet on the putting green, you're rolling this thing around the green and it bumbles around. And he always felt like when the ball was in the air, he had command over it. If it was along the ground, he didn't have command over it because it wasn't a perfect thing. You see my point?
Yeah,
And
100%.
Mo,
Yeah, I've never thought about it that way, but yeah.
so, and Mo was the same way. Mo said to me one time, he goes, I feel more confident hitting my driver through a tire at 250 yards than I do trying to make a putt of 10 feet. Okay. And Mo is an okay putter.
Yeah.
But he could care less when he got on the putting green. Like he knew it was either going to go in or not.
Yeah.
So to him, he went on the green, he'd take a look, he'd hit it, it would roll up, maybe go in, maybe miss, likely miss, go up, tap it in, move on. But he hit it so stone dead so many times that he'd make his 4 or 5 birdies regularly every round, maybe more, very often less, because he hit it stone dead that many times.
Mm-hmm.
So most people can kind of cozy in a 4-footer, even if they're a terrible putter.
Yeah.
But it's like the David Toms of putters, could drip in benders from 15 feet at perfect pace into the middle of the cup. That wasn't George Knudson. That wasn't Mo Norman.
Yeah.
Mike Weir was a pretty damn good putter for certain stints in his, professional journey. Mike Weir was more of an epic chipper, pitcher, bunker player, scoring wedge player, pretty good from like 7-iron to sand wedge.
Yeah.
His driver was, his weak spot for a while. His 3-wood was like magic. I can't even explain. I've seen, his 3-wood from 270 yards. I swear to God, he had some weird ability to hit the stupid 3-wood up close to the pin, even though he wasn't a super powerful guy.
Yeah.
Because he was, 5'8" or 9, $160. He wasn't good. He couldn't overpower, but he was just such a good 3-wood player, yet he wasn't a great driver of the ball. But he was so just committed to getting it in the hole.
Mm-hmm.
Another guy that I got to spend a lot of time with when I was young was Jim Furyk. That guy was fascinating. So here's a guy with this, weird deal before Matthew Wolff and other weird deals. And, and he just figured out a way to get the ball to come off the face and kind of go where he wanted it to go. And then he became a very good putter, cross-handed his whole life.
Yeah.
Because his dad told him to do it that way. So he did it that way. Because Gary Player told his dad it's the best way to putt.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of ways to get it done, man. A lot of ways, which is interesting. And then the coaching, coaches have their preferences, and their, and I'd say a coach has to look at who's in front of them, because we get all kinds of athletes, and some of them we can make them look a little bit nicer, and some of them we just have to make the ball flight better. And they're not going to look nice, but we can make their ball flight better. We can teach them how to have a better, quote, D plane, because we can aim them into their target line if they can't turn their hips. We can do things so that the club can approach the golf ball better, even though they may not look like Adam Scott. Nobody does, but they can hit better shots once they understand that, hey, you're physically not going to be able to do certain things, but you can certainly hit better if we set you up differently. So, there's a lot of that to do as well.
Yeah, so using the tech more to match to the player rather than using the tech to try and make the player look like what you want them to look like.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. And I think when you look at those kind of old, the like previous kind of like, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s golf swings, they weren't kind of, bar a couple maybe like with Jackie Burke and Nicholas and stuff, they weren't really influenced by instruction or coaching. They were kind of like, to use that old, they were kind of born out of the dirt, so to speak. And my worry sometimes is that we're so informed right now that sometimes players lose that, they lose out on that process of, really trying to find what works for them and just repeats, like, and not trying to be into lead wrist flexion, shallowing, rotation, angle of attack, steep on chipping, whatever the case may be. They just find it a little bit, which is interesting. You mentioned earlier on about the communication side of things, and I think if I was to sit down in a room full of other kind of like fellow coaches and ask them about Martin Chuck, probably that's one of the things that really would stand out, that would be mentioned by a lot of coaches, was how impressive you are in your communication style. And definitely, you mentioned at the start that you love coaching, and it's very evident when you're around you and around your players. When I was there for those couple of days, and like some of the phrasing and the how you would communicate to students, like I found that, to me, I learned a ton in those 2 days, but that to me was the really, like, the magnificent thing. I was so impressed by how the tone, the phrasing, the verbiage. Is that something that you just happen to kind of like end up being really, really good at that? Is it something that you consciously work on? And is it something that you look to help your team with?
It's all of that. So
Okay.
I'll be 55 at the end of the month.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
You don't look a day over 42. You're good.
Well, thank you. Which means it's almost 40 years of coaching golf to at some level. Mm-hmm. Almost. Because I started working for George Knudsen at his range in north of Toronto in Buttonville, Ontario when I was 16. Okay. So I had listened to George from the time I was 9. I started working for George at his facility at 16 with a script on, when I see this, say this. When I see this, say this. So I had a script. And then obviously I was a bit of a cocky golfer myself. So then I would add in my own little style. And then, I always, even my college teammates would say, hey, man, help me out with this. What do you see? Okay, well, I see this. Mm-hmm. And then even professionally, on the Canadian tour, some of the guys would be like, hey, man, give a look. Okay. So I had a lot of experience then. Well, not a lot, but it was developing. And so, mm-hmm. You have the momentum and inertia of time. And so, not to say you can't, like, now, everything's there at your fingertips. Like, some young guy can be massively educated, know way more than me in a brief period of time, but can they connect with the human on the other side of the lesson? Yeah. Because to me, a big part of the lesson is reading the human that's taken that lesson. Are they terrified of the moment? All right, what kind of person are they? How do you communicate with that person? Mm-hmm. Do you give them shit? Yeah. Start off hard, or do you start off like a warm hug? Because I do both, man. Yeah. I start off hard sometimes, or I start off like all cuddly. Yeah. Oh, way to go. You're doing great. I'm like, man, that sucks. Come on. You can get better than that. Yeah. Because you can tell right away who you're talking to, or maybe you can't if you're 24. Mm-hmm. You see my point? And then trust me, age gives me a bit of grace, because I can be the hard ass at my golf school, but my assistant who's 32 can't be, because the student's 70. Yeah. So I can be harder because I'm more in that, in their generation, versus mm-hmm. 32-year-old can't give the 70-year-old shit. I can. Yeah. Because they came to see me, and I'm like, Bob, would you fix your damn grip already? Mike's told you 100 times, man, don't make me come over there. And then he's laughing. All right. Okay, fine. And then, now it's a fun kibitz. And then I can be the bad guy. And mm-hmm. Mike can make, now I've supported my coach. And now the guy's like, okay, fine. I'll get this damn hand on better. Yeah. And so it's a communication style. It's just not, and a good lesson. So Mike Hebron's a great mentor of mine too. Love the guy. Okay. He's got a new book out called It Depends. I recommend all your coaching people watching get it. It's available on Amazon right now. It's called It Depends. And, so he went from like highly technical coach back in the day, golf machine maniac, to way more softer side of Sears, learning styles, like trying to, talk, getting people to kind of understand stuff. And so, I've seen coaches kind of evolve over being like this genius number cruncher angle, club delivery, my golf machine books are right there in my little book stand, to where, you pick what's the one word that this person can leave with. And he always used to say, you're not taking a lesson, you're seeing me for a session. Because mm-hmm. a session, there's going to be 10 lessons in this session, or 8 lessons, or 7 lessons, or 12 lessons in our session. It's not a lesson. You're coming to see me for a period of time. Among that period of time is going to be a bunch of lessons. Mm-hmm. You see my point? Yeah, 100%. So that's how he always said it, was you got a lot of lessons in this session. It's not one lesson. Mm-hmm. Some are going to be more focused on maybe like isolating something of a root issue we got to deal with.
Yeah.
And then other times I'm going to tell you a story that's going to bring all this together for a memory trigger to help you kind of put it together when you leave, because people like stories. They like being told stories because it's a memory and it's fun. Oh, Martin Chuck told me about the time he, made triple bogey at the, Canadian Masters in Hamilton, which shit, I wish I didn't do, but yeah, I've done that. I've topped 3 woods off the tee in tour events.
Yeah.
And people, and I made par after I've topped it off the tee. So we can do stuff and have laughs, and in golf, there's no 2 swings that are ever the same ever.
Yeah.
I have I've had gears for 11 years now. Okay. Or 10 years. And there's not 2 swings in my computer of thousands of swings that are the same. Not 2.
Yeah.
Not 2. Your countryman, Rory's in there. It's lovely.
Yeah.
Okay. They're not the same. He's pretty good.
Yeah.
There's tons of pros in there. They're not the same. No, they're the same enough.
Yeah,
they're
there's functional variability or something.
Yeah,
they're a little bit different, but at the end of the day, when it gets down to impact, they're pretty close to being the same.
Yeah, ball sort of goes where they want it to. Sort of.
Exactly. Just as a final kind of question for the coaches, and maybe you've kind of covered this a little bit. What would be your kind of one piece of advice to all coaches out there? I'm not talking, because I know normally this question gets banded about. It's like to young coaches, and I'm like, no, to coaches in general who would like to enhance their skills, profession, knowledge, any of those things. What would be kind of one piece of advice besides getting Mike Hebron's new book?
Like you came to visit me, I would say go find somebody who's had success in the field that you would like to become, become or surpass, and call them up and say, can you come and see? You're obviously doing something right, sir or ma'am. May I come watch and see your operation and how you do what you do and why you have success? And if they're worth a hill of beans, they're going to be like, yeah, come on down. Yeah. Sure. Now I invite anybody to come to the Raven and watch my golf school. Now, the one-on-one lessons, not so much, because they're paying for one-on-one.
Yes.
And I may not know them yet, and they may be nervous.
Yeah.
So I just respect the fact that, hey, this is just they paid for my one-on-one undivided attention. But a golf school is a lot going on, and to have coaches come and sit and watch, that's easy. Yeah. You come anytime you want. But I would say, it's always good to call people you want to learn from. Hey, how did you get to charge the rate you charge? How do you handle online lessons? How do you handle the newbie versus the juniors versus the good players? And because I tell you what, I don't mind taking a phone call. I always joke. I say I talk to people on my drive to work in the morning, on my drive home in the evening. I'm unavailable during the day because I'm coaching. Yeah. But I don't mind talking to some young coach in Kentucky who has a question for me at 7 a.m. when I'm on my way to work. Nice to meet you. How can I help you? Yeah.
I think that skill with technology and with so much availability and social media, I think maybe the want or the requirement to do that isn't as much as it used to be. Do like kind of go prior to like social media and the availability to like see what does Martin Chuck do? Well, I can kind of see it a little bit on Instagram, so I'll just follow him from a distance. But I don't think what's really important, and I've spent time traveling and hanging out with different people, it's such a minute reflection of the person. It's so small. And then I've always and I used to attend kind of seminars, let's say, and you'd be in a room with 60 or 70, 80 people, and with all respect to the coach, it would probably be something similar that they've kind of presented before, but it'd be very kind of small time that you would get the opportunity to ask questions. And when I kind of hung out with you for 2 days, we got spend some time kind of going up and down to the range and ask a lot of questions. You were very nice and very asking a lot of questions about me. But that opportunity, I don't think people appreciate how much you can learn from just going and spending a day with someone, and be very respectful, obviously, of the time that person has invested and of their time. But I'm totally in agreement with you. I think that's one thing I would highly, highly recommend, because you'll learn so much, and you'll get to ask your questions, and you make a nice acquaintance in the business too, that you never know where that might lead to kind of down the road.
No. Amen. That's
Martin, just kind of just before we kind of log off, I'm going to put the details in the kind of the information on this podcast anyway, But I'm sure, are the schools sold out for the whole season as yet? Or are there some
Pretty
availability
much.
still yet? Yeah,
They're
they're close.
I always save a couple of spots for the alumni, and but for the most part, yeah, they're pretty sold out. So
Okay. For the trainee aids, that kind of side of things, which is a huge thing. What's the web address for those kind of trainee aids?
just you can find everybody can find me at tourstriker.com.
Tourstriker.com. That's nice and easy. I like that. And we'll
Mm,
talk about we'll put in the Instagram handles and so forth. Listen, man, thank you so much. I think you're fantastic at what you do. I know you don't love the praise, and I think all the great coaches are kind of a bit, I don't praise you too much, but I think you're really, really good at what you do. Excellent at what you do. You've been very, very nice to me anytime I've approached you, contacted you, obviously allowing me to come down and watch you and the team work for 2 days, 3 days, kind of with your players and so forth. So I can only wish you all the very, very best. And thank you for all your help, all the kind of information you put out there, because I know it helps a ton of coaches to see your videos and how you communicate, how you really converse with your clients. If we're really paying attention, we get some gold nuggets out of that. So thank you so much for your time. We eventually got this organized after a few mishaps, and awesome. hopefully Arizona are doing better in the baseball tonight than they were last night. Anyway, I don't know if they're playing tonight, but we'll check it out. All right, man. Thank you so much, and we'll talk to you again soon.
See you, Steve.
See you, man. Cheers. Perfect.
All good.
Thanks.
Wrap?
Yeah.
Hey,
no, that's
that was fun.
Awesome, man. Thanks very much.
Oh, you bet, buddy. Take care. If you need me, call me.
I appreciate it.